Welcome back. I am your host, Craig Wynn, and this is another edition of the Yahowah blog. We are returning to my favorite subject. Many of you already know that Dowd, the Messiah, the Son of God, the King of Yisrael, our returning King, King of the universe, is my favorite topic. And I revel in, love the songs that he wrote to us, inspired by Yahowah. We've already done 2 programs on the second Mizmowr. Mizmowr means lyrics to be sung. And this is our 3rd installment on this marvelous song written by our very Savior. Unfortunately, however, it is by robbing Dowd of everything that the Messiah portends, that both Judaism and Christianity, even to some extent Islam, were cobbled together. And their scriptures are all based on robbing Dowd of his accolades. You know, there's the claim in Christianity that Jesus is the Christ, therefore he's the Messiah, that he is the Son of God. Utter nonsense. He's nothing but a crude counterfeit. And it's obvious. According to Yahowah, and he's the only one that actually matters in this regard, Dowd, David, is his son. Not only that, it was Yahowah who instructed, beginning with Samuel, to anoint Dowd as the Messiah, not once, but 3 times. He is the Messiah. And Dowd's Mizmowr, particularly the 22nd and 88, but all through the Mizmowr, he makes it absolutely clear that he returned in year 4000 Yah to fulfill the first 3 Moed Mikre, Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. And so he is the Passover lamb. He is the one who carried our guilt into Sheol on Matzah. He is the means for us to be part of God's family. And all of these things were robbed by the authors of the Christian New Testament to create legitimacy through counterfeit. Even in Judaism, the same story is true, where in this psalm and the previous statement, Yahowah made it absolutely clear that Dowd was and always will be his Messiah. Rabbi Akiva began rabbinical Judaism by claiming otherwise, something that rabbis are very good at, contradicting God. And he claimed that Bar Kokhba, the son of a star, was the Messiah and brought the wrath of Rome on Judea, leading to the diaspora. You want to know why Jews have had such a rough go of it these last 1900 years? Blame Rabbi Akiva and the creation of rabbinical Judaism and the initiation of the Talmud. This is the truth. In Judaism, even, they still haven't learned the lesson. Here they had these instructions revealed to them by prophets with the same genealogy, spoke the same language, part of their community, and yet they ignore them. And rather than recognizing what the prophets clearly proclaim, which is that Dowd is the Messiah and he is the one who is returning to save a remnant of Yisrael, they are parading around with this yellow flag and this crown on it, awaiting their Messiah, whom they do not know. And God made it very clear. The Messiah, who served as king of Yisrael 3,000 years ago, the Messiah who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim, so that we might live forever, be perfected, so that we can exist in Yahweh's presence and be part of his family. That very Messiah is the one who is returning, and his name is not only known, it's the second most popular name throughout the entirety of the Torah and prophets. It is the most popular name of a man, and second only to the repetitions of Yahweh's name, which is another name the rabbis erased. Can you imagine having the chutzpah to erase the very name of God so that you don't know it, so that you don't use it, so that you're actually allergic to it? God damn the rabbis. They've played you for fools. Wake up, Israel. Come to know Yahweh. Come to know your Messiah. He wrote these songs for you. By denying the fulfillments of Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim in year 4000 Yah, and then by ignoring Shabuah and replacing Teruah, then inverting the purpose of Kippurim, so it's a day to twirl chickens, rabbis have plundered Yahweh's Masayach of respect that he earned, and that is what Yahweh has just revealed to us. Equally egregious, rather than admit that the founder of their religion was wrong, rabbis have doubled down on Akiba's dim-witted scheme of venerating a false Messiah, Bar Kokhba, the son of a star. That's how you got that star on your flag. It is not the Star of David. It's the star of Bar Kokhba, the son of a star. David does not have a star. You've been played for fools. Israel, I am your herald. I am here to lead you back home. I am here to reintroduce you to Yahweh. And yet you continue to be hoodwinked by these idiots in your midst. Well, as a result of Paul's machinations, who, by the way, was a rabbi, first person actually to use that name in writing, he ascribed it to himself. He robbed Dode of his title, Ha-Masayach, and Ben Elohim, these titles to create an object of worship in the man-God, Jesus Christ. His name and that of his religion is a direct attack on Yahweh's Ha-Masayach and his Ben, son, and therefore an attack on God himself. As Dode's inspired testimony has and will continue to demonstrate, Father and Son, Yahweh wa Masayach Hu, work hand in hand, side by side, to achieve salvation and reconciliation through the Mikra on behalf of the Bereth. The simple truth is that the Bereth is God's family, and Dode is his firstborn. God makes this abundantly clear. If you don't like it, argue with him. See where that takes you. I'll tell you, it'll take you to the synagogue. And for the rest of us, the singular means to approach our brother and our father is through the invitations to be called out and meet, which father and son fulfilled together. Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim. It isn't until we come to appreciate this relationship, why, when, and how it led to this most formative, favorable resolution of our guilt, of our mortality, of our being separated and estranged from God, all of which are resolved through Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim, when you understand what those dates represent and who fulfilled them. It is then that we truly know Yahweh, and we truly appreciate Dode. And in this light, a nameless Masayach, the perception of unfulfilled Moedim, the advocacy of Jesus Christ, a New Testament or a Talmud, is a affront to the very Son of God, and it is an attack on his Father. One of the most interesting things about Masayach anointed is that the recipient is separated and set apart from all others, and thus cannot be seen as integrated into a popular religion or a body politic. And that to this time, this was written, this second Mizmowr, there was only one man who had been Mashiach anointed. And that's the author of this psalm, Dod. To be Mashiach in the most positive and authorized sense, as Yahweh defined the concept, one has to be anointed in olive oil at Yahweh's direction. Dod is the ultimate recipient and example. While Dod represents the truest sense of this word, Mashiach, as is the case with almost all Hebrew terms, Mashiach isn't necessarily an endorsement. In Dod's case, it clearly was. But Yahweh used it in conjunction with Cyrus, the Babylonian king who lived and died a pagan, estranged from God. So while never anointed with olive oil, he was called Mashiach, but only as a tool to be wielded to gain the attention of a wayward nation. The good news here for Yisrael is that God's people are being led to see this as it once was and remains, as the choice between Yahweh and Dod on one side and the adversary and religion on the other. HaMashiach, anointed, they are being asked to accept. The one they are being invited to know and benefit from is both the shepherd and the lamb, as well as the king of the millennial kingdom. The beloved son of Yah is Dod, and he is not unknown, but exceedingly well known. And he most certainly is not the Christian Messiah who was crafted in the image of Dionysus. Now, there is another problem, also of a religious nature, causing Yisrael to reject Dod. According to the acclaimed prophecy in the 9th chapter of Yeshayah, the Son of God, his Mashiach, is a Gabor, a mighty leader, a gallant warrior, who has and who will once again conquer Yisrael's Goyim enemies, unify the kingdom, and bring peace to the land. It was in the Yobel year of 133 CE that Akiba transferred these attributes to the warlord Simon Bar Kokhba, fooling many in Israel to follow him. And they did so to their doom at the hands of Rome. But what they have all missed is that Dod was and will always be the only Mashiach anointed Messiah that counts. More egregious than this is the realization that the reason Akiba foisted this false Messiah on Jews was that he was seeking to justify Judaism's failure to recognize that Dod had come to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim in the Yobel year of 4,000 Yah as promised. To pronounce that Bar Kokhba was HaMashiach was to denounce that Dod had been here and done that. It was the most egregious crime ever perpetrated against God's people, with the most horrid consequence. And it was committed by the founder of Rabbinic Judaism. There was a first, a second, and there will be a third coming of Dod, the Son of God and his Messiah. In Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the religions have misconstrued the first and misappropriated the next two. And to do so, they must deny that everything that Dod wrote in these Mizmowr, particularly as I have shared, the 22nd through 31st Mizmors, as well as everything Yeshayah and the other prophets had to say about him, where all of their prophecies call him out by name. The truth is as obvious as words allow. It is the religious mindset that is opposed to what God said. The Torah proclaims that the Shabbat celebration of Sukkah following God's return will be the millennial kingdom of Dod. We are discovering that the world will be united against the man Yahweh chose to save and guide his people, the man who explained how to properly observe the Torah in the 119th Mizmowr, and then the man who lived it. More than any other, it is Dod's name and his words, which are on the Nesh banner that Yahweh is raising and that he will use to call his people home. Dod knows that man seeks to control while God wants to free humankind from religious and political control. He understands that we must be free of human domination through religion and politics before we can participate in the covenant. So at this time, Dod, Yahweh's Mashiach, is asking his people to break our allegiance to all forms of governmental and religious institutions. Will you follow their advice? Will you join us? The next line in his song reads, "Let us choose of our own volition to break and to pull off their bounds, which trap and ensnare, and desire to cast off and throw away from us twisted and interwoven threads which bind and immobilize." Mizmowr, lyrics to be sung, Psalm 2:3. To my knowledge, this has never occurred in all of human history. Dod is speaking prophetically, therefore, of our present day, hoping that Yisrael will listen to him and remove the twisted and interwoven, these entangled threads which bind them to human institutions and break free of them. It is only once this is done that any of us, including Yisrael, can return to Yahweh. That was an interesting insight. There are religious, political, and militaristic, even economic, societal, and conspiratorial schemes that need to be exposed and condemned. Now, in this case, since he mentioned it, spiders have 6 spinnerets, which they can manipulate independently or in context with one another. These spinnerets are not simple structures with a single orifice producing a single thread, but instead highly complex structures of microscopic spigots capable of twisting together and combining these nearly invisible filaments. Without doing so, the independent silk threads would be weak and useless. In life, God has given us a metaphor through which to understand this nature of this interwoven web of human Babel. One snare alone, one thread alone, one religion, one political party, one military establishment, one conspiracy would not be enough to entangle God's people and bind them and wrap them up. It takes far more than that, which is why he used the metaphor of this web and its spinneret, the spinneret that produce it, so that you might understand how they all work together, this interwoven complex of religion and politics, of patriotism and militarism, and how they all are intertwined to make it exceedingly difficult to break free. And also keep in mind, do you know how we have the English word religion? You know where it comes from? It's legion, from the Latin. It's Roman in origin. It means to rebind. It's the same word they used for ligament. So it is to rebind, to tie together. The ultimate binds, if I should say, on humanity are religious. They have the greatest control over the most people and have for the past 6,000 years. This is what you must break free from. This is what Dod is encouraging you to break free from. Now, beyond this, spiders extrude silk from their spinnerets to do more than build webs designed to ensnare their unsuspecting insect prey, imprisoning those they trap. They construct silken galleries for their own protection, using their spinnerets to distribute their sperm and to expand their brood. They even weave cocoons for their own metamorphosis. If you are listening to this and you have not yet done so, if you are still political and religious, pull off all that binds you. Be free of human control mechanism. Throw it all away, especially that which is aboth, combined and twisted in Babylonian fashion to bind and control you. Your soul matters, and it must be free of these things for you to engage and be part of God's family. It is a simple truth, and yet one which is in conflict with everything we have been indoctrinated to believe. To be free, we must be apolitical, neither voting nor submitting. To be saved, we must be anti-religious, neither believing nor participating. To be right with God, we must acknowledge and distance ourselves from all that is wrong with man. There is no path to the covenant, no way to heaven, no means to salvation that is accessible through any religious or political scheme. It isn't until we free ourselves from their bonds that we are free to know and approach Yahweh. He will not allow us to drag this muck into his home. If he did, heaven would be no different than the hell we're experiencing here on earth. If you want to see what religion does to people, consider what the Muslims did to Jews on 10/7/23, and then how the religion of liberalism, progressive thought, and Muslims have conspired together to march in the streets to terrorize people into submission. This is what religion does. It is a horrible plague, a mind virus that eats away at the soul and consciousness, rendering people less than human. Now, recognizing that those Yahweh is laughing at in this next statement are those who have conspired to oppose him and to ensnare his people. You read, "He who inhabits, establishing his dwelling place in the heavens, holds them in contempt and will pulverize them." Yahweh ridicules their foreign behavior and he mocks their unfamiliar language. Mizmowr 2:4. Yahweh, who lives in the seventh dimension, in the spiritual realm, he holds the religious and the political, who have woven this web to ensnare his people, to keep them from knowing him. They have done this, and God has noticed, and he holds them in contempt, and his promise is to pulverize them. And he will ridicule their foreign behavior and mock their unfamiliar language. That's probably why Yahweh took Elia long ago, 2,888 years ago, and while he is one of the two witnesses who will return to try to awaken his people in the last 3.5 years before his return, because Elia ridiculed the religious as well. He was enormously sarcastic. For most of human history, God has ignored the political and religious mumblings of man. The lone exceptions have been when it either occurred in the promised land or the suffering of his people became too great to bear. What we have not seen is Yahweh scoffing at and his disdain over the ridiculousness of man's behavior and the unintelligible stammerings. So yet again, this is prophetic of the days leading up to his return, when evil will reach a menacing crescendo. I rather enjoy laughing along with father and son, even of us being entertaining to one another. But none of us should ever want Yahweh or his Messiah to laugh at us, to disrespect, to mock, to ridicule us. as the world has done to them through their religious portrayals. So now, after enduring a millennia of this, father and son are seen responding to the world's religious leaders, especially those who are misleading and oppressing their people. It is, however, more appropriate than we might imagine. It was early one morning at the base of Mount Torah, while Moshe was transcribing the Torah with Yahweh, that the recently liberated children of Israel were led astray by Aaron, which means the alternative. At his discretion, they fashioned a molten metal bowl out of the jewelry received from the Egyptians, and they started shakach, laughing and playing. In essence, contemporaneously mocking Yahweh, disrespecting him. What they did and what political and religious leaders are saying and doing today is contemptible, even laughable. Nevertheless, the idea of God being amused that our leaders actually believe that they have the authority and ability to speak for him and of him, toying with them, even laughing at them, is frankly uncomfortable for a lot of people. God mocking human political and religious leaders. But if we were to put ourselves in their shoes, it is how we would react if we watched an imbecilic imam blow himself up in his class of would-be terrorists in the case of a premature detonation. Further, Yahweh should hold those who have claimed to speak for him in contempt, for subjugating his people, for denigrating his son, and he has every right to pulverize them for centuries of oppressive religious and political behavior. It should not be surprising that he ridicules their strange behavior and that he mocks their unintelligible statements. Well, this is a good place for us to end the third segment of our review of the second Mizmowr. When we return, we will begin with Mizmowr, lyrics to be sung, Psalm 2:5. I've enjoyed sharing these insights from Yahweh with you. I am your host, Craig Wynn, and this has been the Yahowah Blog.